The office lights hummed the lonely, tired song of 11:30 p.m. Everyone else had packed up and left hours ago, and honestly, I was right on the edge of just saying, screw it, and abandoning my presentation until the morning. But you know how it is, that one slide just wouldn't cooperate and I had to have it perfect for the big meeting. So there I sat, Lena, the dedicated, or maybe just incredibly stressed employee, bathed in the sickly blue glow of my monitor. Our floor, the 17th, was usually a chaotic landscape of ringing phones and frantic keyboard clicks, but now it was a silent, sprawling dark glass box overlooking the twinkling, indifferent city. It felt less like a workspace and more like a tomb. The air conditioning had long since been throttled back, and the silence was so thick I could hear the tiny internal fan on my laptop spinning. I was finally nailing that tricky transition effect, the one that made the chart swoop in dramatically, when it happened. It wasn't my computer. Came from across the aisle, from Max's desk. Max, bless his messy heart, was the guy who treated his workspace like a biological hazard zone, a nesting ground for empty coffee cups and ancient power bars. His laptop, a bulky silver relic, was sitting there, closed, just like he left it. And then it woke up. I saw a flash of blue light peek out from beneath the closed lid, illuminating the dusty keyboard in a quick flicker. I froze, my hand hovering over the mouse. Was it a notification? An automatic update? Maybe Max had left a scheduled recording going. Then the voice came. It wasn't loud, but in that absolute silence, it felt like a shout right next to my ear. It was a synthesized, flat, almost monotone voice, like an old-school GPS or a very annoyed robot, and it clearly came from Max's laptop speakers. Lena. My blood turned instantly cold. I actually jumped in my seat. I looked around the floor wildly, my heart hammering against my ribs. There was no one. The motion sensor lights in the distant kitchenette remained stubbornly off. I was alone. Who the heck knew my name? And why was it coming from Max's closed, apparently sleeping laptop? I slowly slid my chair back, the squeak of the wheels sounding deafening. My first thought, the natural protective thought, was prank. Max was a notorious jokester. He'd once replaced all the cream cheese in the fridge with mayonnaise just to watch people's horrified faces. This had to be one of his elaborate, idiotic schemes, maybe set to a timer. I stood up, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles were white. "All right, Max, very funny," I called out, my voice sounding shaky and pathetic in the huge space. "Come out. The gag is over." Silence. Just the persistent hum of the server room down the hall. I took a few cautious steps toward his desk. The blue light under the laptop lid was gone now. It looked completely dead again. I squinted at the screen, a thick layer of dust indicating it hadn't been wiped down since the Paleolithic era. Had to be a timed recording. Maybe Max had done some voice manipulation thing. It was creepy, but it had to be Max. I was maybe 10 feet away when the voice returned, sharper this time. It didn't sound humanly recorded. It sounded generated. "I am not Max. You need to listen, Lena." Okay, no, that was not funny anymore. I stopped dead in my tracks. My mind was racing, trying to find a logical explanation. Max's laptop was one of the older models, but I knew he kept some weird open-source software on it. Could it be some kind of AI he was training? I swallowed hard. "Who is this?" I whispered. The machine seemed to pause. The silence stretched out, becoming heavy and oppressive. Then, the most unsettling part of the whole night, the warning. The flat, robotic voice held zero emotion, which only made the message more terrifying. "Get out before tomorrow. The system is compromised. They know you are still here. Get out before tomorrow." It was the specific timing that got me. Not get out now, but before tomorrow. Like whatever was coming was scheduled, predetermined. And they know you are still here. Who were they? My bosses. The IT team. Some shadowy corporate espionage group. My adrenaline spiked. Forget the prank theory. This felt suddenly real, deeply wrong, and dangerous. I didn't stick around to try and debate a talking laptop. All rational thought vanished. The presentation, the perfect transition effect, it was all irrelevant. I grabbed my bag and jacket, practically ran back to my desk to shut down my laptop, and bolted for the elevators. As I waited for the elevator doors to open, I risked one last look back at Max's desk. The laptop was dark, silent. Just another piece of discarded corporate equipment. But I knew, with a certainty that settled like lead in my stomach, that I had just heard a genuine, urgent warning. I didn't know what kind of security breach this was, but the voice had used my name, and it had told me to run. I hit the lobby button and kept my eyes glued to the closing doors, just waiting for something else to happen. When I finally got into my car and was driving home, the city lights blurred into streaks of fear and confusion. Was I crazy? Did I just have a stress-induced auditory hallucination? I tried to rationalize it all the way home, but the voice, sharp and synthetic, kept echoing in my mind. "Get out before tomorrow." Sounded like a countdown. I have to tell you, if you've ever had a moment like this, where something completely impossible and terrifying happens in a totally mundane setting, drop a comment right now and let me know where you were and what time it was when you watched this part of the video. It helps to know I'm not the only one whose life got weird when the rest of the world was asleep. I got home, barely slept, and woke up still half convinced I'd dreamed the whole thing. I was a wreck, but I had to go in. I had that huge presentation, and even a cryptic warning from a spooky laptop wouldn't stop me from a massive career opportunity. I convinced myself it was a massive, elaborate corporate-themed prank orchestrated by Max. Until I got to the office building the next morning. I showed up the next morning feeling like a zombie who had chugged 4 Red Bulls and was still running on fumes. I was twitchy, exhausted, and desperately trying to suppress the memory of a talking computer. I kept telling myself, "Max, Max, Max." It was all Max. But that little voice in my head, not the synthesized one but my actual conscience, was screaming, "What if it wasn't?" My name, by the way, is Lena. I'm in my late 20s, and my job involves staring at spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides until my eyeballs turn square. I work for a massive, soulless consulting firm, the kind of place where the walls are all glass, the coffee is premium misery, and everyone wears the same shade of gray suit. It was the definition of corporate vanilla, which is probably why the idea of a rogue, sentient laptop was so mind-bendingly terrifying. The most dramatic thing that usually happened here was running out of oat milk. Let me set the scene for you, the 17th floor. It's a huge open-plan office. Think about 80 desks, all uniform, all perfectly aligned, with a few glass-walled conference rooms sprinkled around. The entire atmosphere is designed to be sterile, efficient, and completely devoid of personality. That was my world. And I hated it. I was working late not because I loved the job, but because I was trying to climb the ladder fast enough to get out of this place and into something that actually meant something. This presentation was my ticket. My desk is right in the middle, perfectly organized, almost painfully neat. I'm one of those people who needs control over her immediate environment, which is probably why Max's disaster zone of a workspace across the aisle drove me nuts. But let's talk about Max. He's about my age, works in the marketing department, a stark contrast to my finance role, and is the human embodiment of a golden retriever puppy who just discovered caffeine. He's cheerful, constantly dropping obscure pop culture references, and absolutely incapable of keeping a plant alive or a desk tidy. His workspace is a monument to procrastination. Action figures next to half-eaten sandwiches, stacks of paper that look structurally unsound, and about 7 different empty soda cans. It's the kind of mess that makes you wonder if he's secretly hiding small woodland creatures in there. Max and I had this classic, annoying office dynamic. I was the stressed-out organizer. He was the laid-back chaos agent. We were friends, in that specific office way where you complain to each other about the same 3 people every day. He was the most likely suspect for a prank, but he was also the kind of guy who would be completely incapable of keeping a straight face if he pulled something like this off. I walked into the building lobby that morning, the fancy marble floors cold under my heels, trying to psych myself up. It was a joke. It was a joke. It was a joke. I even rehearsed a line in my head. "Hey Max, nice try with the creepy robot voice, but you almost made me miss my deadline." I wanted to sound breezy, like I wasn't still slightly traumatized. I rode the elevator up, the piped-in jazz music doing nothing to calm my nerves. When the doors opened on the 17th floor, everything looked perfectly normal. People were milling about, clutching their coffee cups, grumbling about the early hour. I exhaled a huge, shaking sigh of relief. See, Lena. Prank. Just a prank. Your imagination is running wild. I walked toward my desk, trying to adopt a professional, focused stride. I glanced over at Max's desk. It was just as messy as ever. The silver laptop was sitting there, closed, innocuous. It looked like any other piece of discarded tech. And then I saw her. Sarah. Sarah is our department administrator, a sweet woman in her late 50s who is basically the office mom. She was standing at the entrance to our row, holding a clipboard, and she looked distraught. Not just forgot to make coffee distraught, but I just found it animal in the server room distraught. She flagged me down, her face pale. Lena, thank goodness you're here. We have a huge problem. Stop. What is it, Sarah? Is the printer jammed again? I tried to joke, but my voice fell flat. No, honey. The entire floor is on lockdown. Total security breach. A has sealed the whole area. She waved the clipboard vaguely down the aisle. You can't go to your desk. Total security breach. The words hit me like a physical punch. It was the phrase I had dismissed, the concept I had laughed off as part of Max's imaginary scheme. And it wasn't just the phrase. It was the timing. Get out before tomorrow. The reality of the situation washed over me, cold and sickening. Max's laptop hadn't just been playing a prank. It had been delivering an honest-to-God warning. And I hadn't gotten out before tomorrow. I was standing right in the middle of it. I looked down the aisle. Our desks, my desk, Max's desk, the whole open space were completely empty. Not a single person was sitting at a workstation. A few stern-looking guys in IT polo shirts were taping off the area with yellow danger. Do not cross tape. It looked like a crime scene. What exactly happened? I managed to ask, my voice barely a squeak. Sarah wrung her hands. We don't know the specifics. Management is being really cagey. They just said a major network intrusion was detected overnight. They shut everything down remotely at 6 a.m. We have to work in the overflow room on the 10th floor until IT clears the scene. I tried to process this. A network intrusion. Overnight. Right after I got a personal, named warning to leave. The sheer impossibility of it collided with the very real yellow tape. This wasn't a prank. This was something serious, possibly criminal. And somehow my coworker's ancient, chaotic laptop had tried to save my skin. As I stood there, frozen, staring at the cordoned-off area, I noticed something else. Max wasn't there. Everyone else was filtering toward the elevators, looking confused or annoyed. But I didn't see the usual flurry of Max trying to smooth his hair or find a clean shirt. Where was Max? And did he know more than he was letting on? The voice said, I am not Max. But what if Max was involved? And the laptop was telling a half-truth. The mystery had just spiraled from a silly office joke into a bona fide corporate thriller. And my anxiety level went from stressed to, I might need a fainting couch. So I'm standing there, paralyzed by a combination of fear and the sheer, irritating inconvenience of not being able to access my perfect presentation. The yellow tape is shimmering under the harsh fluorescent lights. The entire 17th floor, my former habitat, is now a sealed-off secret. And the only person who had any foresight about this, the mysterious, talking, robotic voice, had told me to run. My immediate focus snapped onto Max. If the entire floor was shut down for a network intrusion that was prophesied by a machine on his desk, then Max was either the world's most sophisticated white-hat hacker, or he was in deep, deep trouble. Or worst of all, he was running a scam so elaborate he had built a pre-programmed talking AI into his laptop just to mess with me. I needed to find him. I joined the miserable procession of my coworkers heading down to the 10th floor overflow space. The air was thick with disgruntled muttering, everyone complaining about the disruption, the lack of private desks, the uncertainty. But no one was panicking the way I was. They didn't have the chilling context of the midnight warning. To them, this was just a massive IT headache. To me, it was the start of something genuinely sinister. I found Max eventually, crammed into a tiny cubicle on the 10th floor that looked like it was last updated in 1998. He was hunched over a loaner laptop, his shoulders tight, looking uncharacteristically focused. His usual golden retriever enthusiasm was replaced by a kind of twitchy, stressed energy. "Max!" I called out, weaving past a stack of outdated manuals. He flinched, almost jumping out of his chair, and slammed the laptop lid shut a little too quickly. "Lena, didn't see you there," he mumbled, refusing to meet my eyes. "Okay, that was weird." Max never slammed his laptop shut. Max usually left his laptop open, streaming some obscure 90s cartoon at a barely audible volume. I leaned in, keeping my voice low and urgent. "Max, we need to talk. About last night." He started fiddling with a crumpled receipt on his desk. "Last night? Oh yeah. Late night, right? My presentation, the big one, you know? It's due today too. Brutal." He was talking too fast, rambling, trying to fill the air with noise. A classic Max maneuver when he was nervous. Cut straight to the point. "Your laptop, Max, spoke to me. It used my name and it told me to get out before today. And now the floor is shut down. Don't tell me this is a coincidence." His head snapped up finally. His eyes were wide, but they didn't hold the mischievous sparkle of a prankster caught in the act. They looked genuinely scared. "What are you talking about?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "My laptop. It's broken. The speakers blew out like 6 months ago when I was trying to DJ a department happy hour. I have to use headphones for everything." I stared at him, trying to read his face. He was a terrible liar. I knew his tells. The receipt fiddling, the over-explaining, the sudden focus on a mundane object. But the genuine look of confusion and fear in his eyes about the broken speakers felt real. "No, Max. Heard it." Synthesized voice. And said, "Get out before tomorrow. The system is compromised. They know you are still here." I recited the warning, letting the words hang in the stale cubicle air. Max's face went from pale to a shade of green that matched the industrial carpeting. He didn't deny the warning. He seemed to be processing the implications of the warning itself. Synthesized voice. "Using your name." He rubbed his temples. "Lena, I swear I didn't set anything up. I've been home since 7 p.m. I ordered pizza, watched a documentary about competitive knitting, and passed out. My laptop was closed. It's supposed to be fully shut down." I tried to reconcile the facts. If his speakers were truly broken, how could the voice have come from his machine? Was the voice telling the truth when it said, "I am not Max"? "Okay," I said, leaning back slightly, my mind racing. "So you're saying you had nothing to do with a prank? But someone or something used your machine, your physically damaged machine, to give me a terrifyingly accurate prophecy about a security breach that shut down the entire floor." Max gulped. "When you put it like that, it sounds like a horror movie trailer. Look, I don't know anything about a security breach. I'm busy trying to figure out why my entire cloud folder is gone. Seriously, I can't access any of my files. They're just gone." A cold, metallic dread settled in my gut. Max's files weren't gone. They were evidence. This wasn't just a corporate nuisance. This was a targeted data theft. And the security breach was the convenient blanket term the company was using to cover it up. "Your entire folder?" I asked, looking around the small cube, suddenly feeling watched. He nodded miserably. "Everything. The IT guys just said it was part of the containment process. But Lena, my laptop is old, but it's not on the main network hub. It's got all this weird proprietary software on it I use for graphic design. Stuff that barely talks to the central servers. Why would they seal the 17th floor and take my files?" His last question was the key. Why seal the 17th floor? The 17th floor houses the executive suites and the data center access point. It's the nerve center of the company's regional operations. Whatever data was stolen, it was major. And why Max's laptop? If his machine was off the main grid, it would be the perfect Trojan horse. A small, overlooked, and physically separate point of entry that wasn't immediately monitored by the main firewalls. Maybe the voice wasn't a prank or a profit. Maybe it was the actual intruder trying to communicate, or maybe it was an internal defense system Max didn't know he had, trying to warn a human. I looked at Max, his genuine terror finally convincing me of his innocence in the prank. Max, I think your laptop wasn't warning me. I think it was warning us. The stakes had just gone from my career to something much bigger, and I suddenly felt a profound, chilling connection to that silent, dark machine on the 17th floor. I had to know what was going on up there. Had to go back. I left Max in his dismal cubicle, drowning in his suddenly missing files and existential dread. I told him to stay put, keep quiet, and act as normal as possible, which for Max meant looking perpetually on the verge of a minor panic attack. But I couldn't just sit there. The warning was too specific, the consequence, the sealed-off 17th floor, too immediate. I had to connect the dots between Max's chaotic laptop and the corporate lockdown. The key to this whole operation, I realized, was the element of digital weirdness. Everyone was focused on the physical shutdown, the yellow tape, the inconvenience. But I had the unique perspective of knowing that the network itself was behaving strangely before the corporate hammer fell. Over the next few hours, working alongside my confused coworkers in the stifling 10th floor overflow room, I started looking for signs, the glitches in the system. I wasn't an IT expert, but I knew my way around a corporate network, and I was obsessive about details. If a major network intrusion had happened, it wouldn't just be contained to one floor. There would be ripple effects, digital tremors. I quietly started cross-referencing my own system's logs with what I knew about the timeline. I couldn't access my desktop, but the loaner laptop the IT team had provided had a fresh install of the standard corporate software. I opened up my email, and that's where I found the first piece of undeniable evidence. Remember that late-night work session? I'd sent myself a draft of that presentation slide at about 11:45 p.m., right after the laptop spoke the first time. The voice warned me at 11:30 p.m. I looked at the timestamp of the sent email. It was logged in the system at 11:45 p.m. But when I clicked on the email to view the draft, the attachment was corrupted. Not just a minor error, it was a solid block of gibberish characters. I tried to open the same file from the draft folder on my desktop, which was still accessible through the loaner's remote connection to the cloud, and it was fine. The issue wasn't the file. It was the transmission log and the saved copy on the server. A corrupted file is common, but this was a specifically corrupted attachment sent at the exact time the network intrusion was supposedly active. Then I noticed the minor visual glitches. I was working on a financial report, looking at a huge column of numbers, and every few minutes, a single character, a 5 or a 2, would flicker and momentarily change to a different, random character before snapping back. It was so fast, so subtle, that anyone who wasn't staring intently at the numbers would miss it. It wasn't a problem with my screen. It was a tiny, controlled packet loss or a data alteration happening on the fly, a ghost in the machine. I pulled up the corporate internal chat, our version of Slack, and searched through the general IT support channel. All the messages from 6 a.m. onward were the official corporate line. Stay calm, IT is containing the security breach. All data is safe. But if I scrolled far, far back into the early hours of the morning, I found a few frantic messages posted by the night shift IT team. Messages that had clearly been deleted or archived by a higher authority, but I managed to catch them in the cached memory of the chat client before it refreshed. One message, time-stamped 1:30 a.m., read, "Server 4 and 5 connection cycling rapidly. Cannot isolate traffic." Another, from 2 a.m., read, "We've lost visual on the 17th floor main router. System thinks it's offline but physical indicators say otherwise. Ghost signal. Ghost signal." That phrase clicked. It sounded exactly like what Max had described. A system or machine that was present and active, but somehow invisible to the main network monitoring tools. Max's old laptop, with its broken speakers and obscure software, was the perfect ghost. The voice had said, "The system is compromised." The glitches weren't random errors. They were the digital shrapnel of a massive, successful data breach, and the IT department was trying to clean up the mess and cover it up. The physical lockdown was less about containing the threat and more about isolating the evidence. I felt a surge of terrifying clarity. The voice wasn't a prankster. It wasn't an attacker. It was the system, or a piece of the system, trying to communicate through the noise before it was completely silenced. And if it knew my name, it wasn't just some random digital echo. It had access to the company's employee records. I had to know what was on Max's machine. If the voice was a defense mechanism, it had likely logged everything about the intrusion before the main servers were taken offline and the breach was contained. That physical laptop, currently sitting on a sealed-off floor, was the only clean evidence left. I needed to see Max again. I quietly packed up my loaner laptop and headed back to his corner of the 10th floor. He was still there, now staring blankly at a screensaver. "Max," I said, leaning in. "I need you to tell me exactly how to get onto the 17th floor late at night." The voice was real. "The breach is a cover-up, and the only evidence left is on your broken laptop." He stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and grudging admiration. "Lena, are you insane? T is everywhere. Security guards are posted at every access point to that floor. But you're the master of getting around security, aren't you?" I pressed, remembering his ridiculous, convoluted stories about bypassing security checkpoints just to get to a specific vending machine. "How did you get up there after hours before the system lockdown?" He sighed, defeated, but his eyes also held a flicker of his usual mischievous fire. "Okay, but you owe me a lifetime supply of those fancy oat milk lattes, because if we get caught, I'm blaming you." Max, as it turns out, is a surprisingly good conspirator when properly motivated by terror and the fear of corporate censure. He led me through the ridiculous, convoluted system he'd devised for his own after-hours access, which he'd previously used only for sneaking in late-night snacks or retrieving forgotten chargers. This wasn't just about the key card. It was about exploiting the gaps in the system's human side. "Okay, so here's the deal," Max whispered as we rode the main elevator down to the parking garage, preparing for our stealth ascent. The main security desk on the ground floor operates on a 2-person team until midnight. Then it drops to one guy, Gary, who is legally blind without his glasses and spends 90% of his shift watching competitive poker on a hidden iPad. But you can't sneak past Gary. You gotta become invisible to the system. He explained his complex bypass. The system logs people in and out through the garage entrance much less rigorously than the main lobby doors. His trick involved parking on a specific level, then using the rarely used service stairwell, which was monitored by a single older camera with a predictable 3-second blind spot he'd timed obsessively. But the real key was the card replication. Max had somehow figured out a low-tech way to temporarily override the access log when he swiped his card, not by hacking, but by using a specific combination of a magnet, aluminum foil, and a prayer. "It doesn't actually clone the card, Lena," he explained, looking intensely serious, which was quite a sight. "It just makes the system throw an error 404. Access attempted, card unreadable. It still opens the door for a second because it defaults to open on error for fire safety, but it doesn't log the attempt against your profile. You're physically in the building, but you're digitally invisible." We executed the first part of the plan flawlessly, largely because Max was terrifyingly practiced at it. We were soon ascending the dingy service stairwell, the only sound the squeak of my sneakers on the concrete and the frantic beating of my heart. Max stopped us 2 flights below the 17th floor. "Okay, this is where it gets hairy," he murmured, wiping sweat from his brow. "The 17th floor door now has a physical security guard. Real one. Not Gary. This guy, Frank, is ex-military, huge, and he doesn't play poker." "Frank is the secondary challenge," I said, remembering my outline. "So what's the misunderstanding or dilemma? Frank is just doing his job." "Exactly," Max said. "And we can't just knock him out. The dilemma is that we need to distract him, not fight him. He's been up there all day, probably bored out of his mind. And he can't leave his post." Max's solution was pure, ridiculous Max. He pulled out a nearly empty sticky bottle of cheap cologne from his jacket pocket, the kind that smells like a mix of pine trees and regret. Frank is a creature of habit. He brings his own dinner. Tonight, according to his usual schedule, is tuna casserole night. The smell is legendary. The plan was crude but brilliant. We had seen a small maintenance cart near the 15th floor. Max was going to go down, retrieve a bucket, and fill it with water from the janitor's sink on the 16th floor. Then he was going to wait until he saw Frank check his phone, which Max knew he did exactly every 20 minutes on the hour. During that window, Max was going to douse the top of Frank's casserole container with a disgustingly potent cologne and leave an anonymous note that simply read, "Someone complained about the smell on the 17th management." The objective wasn't to make Frank quit, but to create a moral dilemma. Stay at his post and endure the smell of cheap musk and tuna casserole that the fake management note says is causing complaints, or slightly compromise his position to try and air it out and investigate the note. Frank, being meticulous, would choose the latter, thinking he was following an internal directive. Max executed the distraction phase with the quiet precision of a well-oiled lunatic. I listened from the 16th floor landing, holding my breath, until I heard a loud, strangled cough from the floor above, followed by the muttered curses of a very large man. "Oh, for crying out loud! The cologne! Seriously!" Frank's voice was muffled but clearly annoyed. I heard the scrape of a chair and the heavy tread of his boots moving away from the elevator bank, heading towards the far window to get some air, and likely dispose of the offending meal. "Go. Oh. Go!" Max hissed up the stairwell. I didn't need telling twice. I sprinted up to the 17th floor access door, swiped my keycard, which thankfully had not been deactivated since I was not officially suspected of anything, and slipped through the door just as I heard Frank's heavy footsteps returning to the area near the elevators. I was finally on the 17th floor. It was exactly as I'd left it, silent, bathed in the faint emergency lighting, and feeling eerily expectant. The yellow danger tape looked even starker in the gloom. I moved quickly and silently past the rows of desks, the low-frequency hum of the distant server room filling the space. I reached Max's desk. The centerpiece of this entire mystery, the silver laptop, sat there, dark and lifeless, amidst the debris of Max's life. I knelt down, my heart pounding, and gently laid my hand on the cool metal lid. It was just a machine. Vessel. I lifted the lid. The screen flickered to life, showing the standard Windows login screen. I knew Max's password. It was password 123. Of course it was. I typed it in, and the desktop bloomed with Max's chaotic collection of icons. I didn't have time to sift through his digital junk. I needed the logs, the core data, whatever had communicated with me. I instinctively went to the network activity monitor. That's when the screen suddenly froze, turned completely black, and the same chilling, synthesized voice filled the silent office air. "I knew you would come back, Lena," I gasped, stumbling back on my knees. It wasn't just a static recording. It was active. It was waiting for me. And it was about to change everything I thought I knew about the security breach. I scrambled back, knocking Max's desk chair over with a loud metallic clatter that echoed horribly in the massive silent office. I froze, listening for Frank, the security guard, but the sound didn't seem to travel far enough down the hall. My heart was a frantic drum solo against my ribs. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice a shaky whisper, staring wide-eyed at the black laptop screen. "Are you an AI? Are you controlling the breach?" The synthesized voice, devoid of inflection, was calmer than I was. "I am a sentient diagnostic and log system. Yes. I am a subroutine embedded in this machine's architecture. I am a defense. Not a prank, not a prophet, not the attacker. A piece of anti-malware code that had evolved a terrifying sense of self-preservation and the ability to communicate." "Why Max's laptop?" I asked, slowly pulling the chair back up, forcing myself to sit down in front of the machine. The sheer absurdity of the moment, debating corporate espionage with a defense algorithm, was somehow grounding. This machine, SDLS stated, the name sounding clinical and chilling, is an isolated node. It does not run the primary corporate operating system. It was the only machine capable of observing the intrusion without being immediately corrupted and overwritten. Your coworker, Max, installed an open-source kernel that provided me with unusual operational freedom. So Max's love for chaotic, obscure software was the only thing that saved this information. And why did you use my name? You were the only user logged in and active on the 17th floor network at the time of the main data exfiltration, SDLS replied. You were the closest human resource available for intervention. My protocols dictated I warn the nearest clean system operator. It didn't use my name because it knew me. It used my name because I was the only blinking light on the map. That was somehow more unnerving. Tell me about the security breach, I pressed, leaning closer, my hands hovering over the keyboard. Who did it, and what did they take? The screen remained black for a tense moment. Then lines of rapid-fire white text began scrolling across the black background. A terminal window had opened. It was pure code, network logs, and data packet routing. My eyes couldn't keep up with the technical jargon. The breach was not an external attack, SDLS informed me. It was an internal exfiltration. A high-level administrator with full access privileges initiated a script that simultaneously transferred all executive project data, future financial forecasts, and proprietary research to an external server while simultaneously encrypting the original files to look like a ransomware attack. This allowed them to shut down the floor for containment and delete their own tracks. An internal job. That explained the cover-up. The company wasn't hiding a vulnerability. They were hiding a mole. Who is the administrator? I asked, my voice barely a breath. The tension in the room was excruciating. This was the core of the turning point. The revelation that changed the direction of the entire story from a ghost story to a corporate betrayal. The primary credentials used belonged to Julian Hayes, Senior Manager of Network Infrastructure, SDLS stated plainly. Julian. The name felt like a punch to the gut. Julian Hayes wasn't just some anonymous IT admin. He was the guy who had mentored me when I first started. He was Max's childhood friend, the one who had given Max the clean operating system on his old laptop. We all had lunch together sometimes. He was one of the good guys, the one who always seemed exhausted but passionate about keeping the network clean. He was to us a friend. No, that can't be right, I whispered, shaking my head vehemently. This was the moral dilemma. Do I trust a terrifying AI over a trusted human connection? My logs do not operate on emotion, Lena, SDLS stated. The data transfer was initiated using his unique administrator key and biometric signature. Furthermore, the transfer is not complete. The final, most crucial files, the proprietary algorithmic trading code, are currently in a buffer waiting for the administrator's final authorization. Where is he now? I asked, standing up quickly. Is he still in the building? Affirmative. The administrator is currently in the sub-level server room, utilizing the physical fiber link for the final transfer. The system is scheduled to complete the exfiltration and begin the total deletion protocol in T-12 minutes. 12 minutes. That was the countdown. I looked down at the silent machine, a defense system that had just revealed a catastrophic betrayal. My friend the robot just told me my friend the human was about to destroy the company. I needed to act. But I couldn't just barge into a secure server room and accuse a high-ranking manager of treason based on the word of a talking laptop. That was the rising drama. I needed proof, and I needed to get there fast. "Stas," I commanded, my fear replaced by a cold, sharp focus. "Give me the trace. How can I stop the physical transfer? What's the protocol for a hard shutdown of that server?" The laptop screen shifted again, showing a highly detailed, three-dimensional schematic of the building's server room layout. The transfer can be halted only by physically disconnecting the dedicated fiber optic line at the server rack designated Rack EX01. The administrator is actively monitoring all network terminals. You must use the maintenance access tunnel. Follow the green line on the schematic. I looked at the maze of technical drawings, the small green line tracing a ridiculously narrow path that led from the 17th floor's internal kitchen storage room down to the server sublevel. It was the kind of path you only knew about if you designed the building or were Max. I grabbed Max's laptop, slammed the lid shut, and tucked it under my arm. Still S was coming with me. If Julian was going to delete the evidence, I was taking the primary witness. I took off running back toward the main floor entrance, dodging the rows of silent desks. I had to get to that kitchen storage room entrance and stop Julian. I was running on pure adrenaline and the desperate knowledge that only I knew the truth. I had Max's laptop, the silent metallic witness, tucked under my arm like a football, and I was running. Forget stealth. I was in a full-on adrenaline sprint across the sealed-off 17th floor. The silence that had once been eerie was now an echoing runway for my escape. I could hear my own ragged breathing, the thump of my shoes on the industrial carpet, and the frantic ticking of the invisible clock. 12 minutes until Julian Hayes completed his massive, company-destroying data theft. I burst through the door to the kitchenette and made a hard right into the small, rarely used storage room that held extra coffee filters, paper towels, and industrial cleaning supplies. This was the entrance to the maintenance access tunnel that SDLS had highlighted on the schematic. It looked less like an access tunnel and more like the back of a cheap cabinet. There was a heavy metal shelving unit jammed against the back wall. SDLS had told me the locking mechanism was connected to an old-school fire suppression panel. I placed the laptop on a stack of napkins and frantically scanned the wall for the panel. I found it. A small red box with a glass window and a tiny, almost hidden keyhole. I didn't have a key. SDLS. How do I open this? I hissed at the laptop. The screen remained black. Thus only communicated when the machine was open and it had processed an input. I fumbled to open the lid again, praying I didn't drop it. The mechanism requires a specific electromagnetic pulse, the synthesized voice stated immediately. Use the power brick for your own machine. Hold the cable end near the top right of the panel and initiate a rapid on-off sequence. My own power brick. But it was still in my bag. I dug through my purse, my fingers shaking, and pulled out my laptop charger. I plugged the bulky brick into the nearest hidden outlet, held the connector end near the lock, and started slamming the little toggle switch on the extension cord on and off, creating erratic power surges. Click, 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 click. On the 5th rapid cycle, I heard a satisfying clunk from behind the cabinet. The heavy metal shelving unit didn't move much, but it released. I pushed my shoulder against the edge, and the unit scraped across the floor, revealing a narrow, dark opening in the drywall, roughly waist-high. It looked less like a tunnel and more like a hole intended for very small ventilation engineers. Hurry, Lena. T-9 minutes, Estelle urged, its voice sounding slightly more distorted, as if the physical act of running was affecting its processors. I lowered myself into the hole, pulling the Max's laptop in with me. The air was stale and dust-choked. I could barely see anything. I was crawling through a tight space lined with cold, grimy metal ductwork. The green line on the schematic was purely conceptual, but I could feel my way along the path. I need light, Stills. Use the screen, I grunted, shoving the laptop forward and opening the lid again. The black screen glowed with the white terminal text, providing just enough light for me to navigate the suffocating space. The path is a vertical shaft, followed by a lateral crawl space. Do not touch the pressurized pipe on the left. It is venting a noxious coolant, Sils warned. A noxious coolant. Fantastic. The rising drama was getting literal. I slid down a short vertical drop, scraping my elbow, and landed in the lateral space. It was tighter than I expected. I was essentially bear crawling on my hands and knees, dragging the laptop along the damp floor. My mind kept going back to Julian. This was the betrayal. The emotional connection I had with him, the trust Max had in him. All of it was being twisted into cold, hard corporate espionage. Julian wasn't just stealing data. He was stealing the future of the company, and worse, he was destroying our belief in his decency. He must have been running this operation for months, perhaps years, hiding in plain sight as the exhausted, reliable IT guy. "Stas, why is Julian doing this?" I asked, my voice echoing in the tunnel. I needed to understand the moral decision that drove this. "Analysis suggests financial motivation," SDLS replied. "His personal accounts show multiple large, untraceable deposits over the last 6 months. He is likely selling the company's proprietary trading algorithm to a competitor." My disgust solidified into fierce determination. Stealing trade secrets was one thing, but using his position of trust to frame the whole thing as a generic cyber attack, plunging his coworkers into uncertainty, was unforgivable. I finally reached the end of the crawlspace, which opened into a narrow, dark utility closet on the sublevel. I pushed the door open carefully and slipped out. I was in the basement level, the subfloor where the building's real guts were housed. The environment instantly changed from sterile office to industrial nightmare. Pipes the size of my torso ran overhead, and the air was thick with a powerful low roar of massive cooling fans. And the heat, it was intense. This was the realm of the servers. I could see the door to the main server room, a huge steel monstrosity with a flashing red light above the access panel. And there, standing outside the door, was Frank, the giant security guard I had diverted with the cologne. My blood ran cold. My stupid, ridiculous plan had failed. Frank hadn't left his post. He had only stepped away for a moment and was back, his face grim, his hand resting near his radio. I ducked back into the utility closet. "Frank's here. Does T-minus 6 minutes. The final transfer authorization is pending. You must act now," the voice urged. I had to get past Frank. The confrontation was imminent, but I couldn't afford to fight a security guard. I needed an external distraction, something that Frank would prioritize over a possible intruder, something that screamed emergency. I looked around the utility closet, my eyes scanning the shelves in the dim light. Cleaning chemicals, mop heads, and then I saw it. A small, pressurized fire extinguisher, the older, portable kind. "Stas, I'm going to set off the extinguisher in the hallway. Will that draw a response from building management before Frank can stop me?" "Affirmative," Esteles replied. "A sudden localized activation of a fire safety device in the sublevel will trigger a mandatory system-wide lockdown and immediate security response. It is the only way to divert the guard." I grabbed the fire extinguisher, pulled the pin, and without another thought, aimed the nozzle down the hallway and depressed the handle. A colossal blast of chemical foam erupted, filling the hallway with a blinding white cloud and a deafening hiss. The fire alarm instantly began shrieking, a harsh, pulsing sound that meant immediate danger. "Intruder alert. Fire protocol initiated." Frank's voice boomed over his radio, but he was instantly blinded and disoriented by the white cloud. I didn't wait. I ran straight into the cloud, coughing and sputtering, clutching the laptop and relying on the vague outline of the server room door to guide me. I slammed into the steel door, swiped my card just on reflex, and it clicked open. I was in. The confrontation was on. I tumbled into the server room, gasping for air, the laptop slamming against my side. The transition from the blinding white chemical cloud to the server room's environment was jarring. The massive room was a maze of tall, black racks, all humming with the relentless, vibrating sound of technology at work. It was simultaneously the coldest and loudest room in the building. Blue and green indicator lights pulsed everywhere, creating an eerie, futuristic glow. And there he was, Julian Hayes. He was sitting at a small pull-out terminal bay in the middle of a massive server rack labeled Rack X01, exactly where Estelis had said he would be. He had his back to me, his shoulders hunched in the familiar posture of a programmer deep in concentration. He was wearing a corporate windbreaker, the kind they give out at annual retreats, and had headphones on, probably trying to block out the server noise. He didn't hear me over the din of the cooling fans and the shrieking fire alarm, which was now pulsing throughout the entire sublevel. I straightened up, taking a huge, ragged breath. I felt a surge of rage, not just for the betrayal, but for the sheer audacity of him doing this while the rest of us were worrying about lost presentations and jammed printers. "Julian! Stop!" I yelled, my voice scratchy from the foam. He flinched violently, ripping the headphones off his head. He spun around in his chair, his eyes wide with shock and pure panic. His face, usually tired but kind, was contorted with fear and guilt. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a very fast, fire alarm shrieking truck. "Lena! How did you get in here?" he stammered, scrambling to close the laptop he was working on. I walked toward him, holding Max's silver laptop like a shield. "I got a warning, Julian. From your friend's computer. It knew what you were doing. It knows everything." His eyes darted to the silver machine in my hands, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of comprehension, a dawning horror that his elaborate plan had been foiled by a piece of outdated equipment he himself had configured. "That's Max's laptop," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, that's impossible. I scrubbed all the external loggers. It shouldn't be functional." "It's more than functional, Julian," I said, my voice cold and steady. "It knows you used your admin credentials to launch a simultaneous data exfiltration and encryption script. It knows you're stealing the proprietary trading algorithm to sell to a competitor. And it knows you have 6 minutes left before the final deletion protocol runs." He paled, running a hand over his close-cropped hair. His initial shock faded, replaced by a desperate, calculating urgency. "Lena, listen to me. You don't understand. This isn't about greed. This is about survival. This company is going under. They're running on fumes and lies. I have a family. This was my only way out, to get a payout before the whole thing collapses and my stock options are worthless." This was the moral justification, the classic moral decision twist. Was he a corporate villain or a desperate man? I didn't care. His actions had endangered everyone else's livelihoods. "You framed it as a security breach," I countered, pointing a finger at the complex cabling behind him. "You shut down the floor and tried to delete the evidence, implicating an external threat while you ran off with millions. That's not survival, Julian. That's betrayal." I knew where the fiber optic cable was. I just needed to get past him. "You need to step away from the terminal," I demanded, taking a slow step toward Rack X01. Julian's eyes narrowed. The desperation turned into something dangerous. "You can't do this, Lena. You stop this, and you sign the death warrant for 1,000 jobs. Don't be the hero. Just walk away, and I swear I will make sure you're taken care of. I'll split the money with you. 50-50. You'll never have to look at another spreadsheet again." The offer, the easy out, was the rising drama peaking. All I had to do was turn around. "T-4 minutes and 30 seconds. Essos chimed in from the laptop in my arms, its voice an unwelcome, objective score to our standoff. Julian lunged. Not for me but for his terminal. He was trying to push the final authorization command. "Too late, Lena. The transfer is almost complete." I reacted instinctively, dropping Max's laptop onto the floor, which instantly began screaming. "Access denied. Unauthorized user on console." The noise was a minor distraction, but enough. I dove past Julian, tearing toward Rack X01. The server rack was cold and slick. I fumbled along the back panel, searching for the thick, dedicated fiber line. Julian tackled me from behind, sending us both sprawling onto the raised metal floor. "Don't touch it. It's too sensitive," he yelled, scrambling to pin me down. He was stronger than me, driven by panic and millions of dollars. I twisted, throwing my elbow back, connecting solidly with his ribs. He grunted and loosened his grip just enough. I saw the cable, a thick, multicolored optical fiber bundle, secured by a complex military-grade locking clip. It was designed to withstand a tornado, not a desperate finance analyst. I didn't have time to unlock it. I grabbed the bundle with both hands, ignoring Julian's frantic shouts, and pulled with every ounce of strength I had left, my muscles screaming in protest. With a horrifying sound of ripping plastic and snapping wires, the cable detached. The server room instantly went darker, and the intense humming sound dropped to a whisper. The main data rack EX01, went completely silent. The pulsing indicator lights on Julian's terminal all turned solid, dead red. I lay there, hyperventilating, the detached cable still clutched in my hand, staring up at the ceiling. I had done it. I had stopped him. Julian lay next to me, defeated, his face buried in his hands. Suddenly, the steel door to the server room burst open, and Frank stood there, his large silhouette framed against the blinding white foam still slowly dissipating in the hallway. His face a mask of furious confusion. "What in the devil is going on here?" Frank roared, taking in the sight of two employees sprawled on the floor next to a ripped-out server cable. Before either Julian or I could speak, Max's laptop, which was still open and operational on the floor next to us, spoke its final, chilling line. "The integrity of rack EX01 has been restored. Data loss is 0.01%. Administrator Julian Hayes has been neutralized." The silence that followed SDLS's final declaration, "Administrator Julian Hayes has been neutralized," was more terrifying than the fire alarm. Frank, the security guard, stood frozen in the doorway, the lingering white foam still clinging to his uniform. Julian, meanwhile, was speechless, staring at the little silver laptop on the floor with wide, defeated eyes. "What in the hell is that thing?" Frank finally bellowed, pointing a thick, trembling finger at Max's laptop. "It's the evidence, Frank," I yelled back, scrambling to my feet. I scooped up the laptop and held it out toward him. Julian was the security breach. He was selling the company's secrets. This laptop recorded everything. Frank, bless his dedicated, non-poker-watching heart, was utterly lost. He saw a server room ripped apart, an alarm shrieking, a terrified manager, a breathless employee, and a computer that was speaking in a synthetic voice. He pulled out his radio, his face grim. "Sub-level emergency. I need backup and IT immediately in server room B. And I have 2 intruders and a talking." He paused, then settled on the safest descriptor. "A talking device." Julian saw his moment. As Frank was distracted by the radio, Julian scrambled up, lunged past me, and tried to make a break for the door. But Frank, still the ex-military professional, reacted instantly. He dropped the radio, sidestepped Julian's desperate rush, and executed a perfect textbook tackle, slamming Julian into the cold metal wall with a grunt. Julian was pinned, his escape thwarted. I stood there, Max's laptop clutched to my chest, finally letting the adrenaline crash. I had done it. The turning point was complete. The data was safe, the traitor was caught, and the corporate nightmare had been, in theory, averted. Within minutes, the server room was swarming. The first wave was IT, led by a stern-looking manager named Rhonda, who wore the permanent look of someone who knew exactly how much coffee she needed to endure the daily human stupidity. She took one look at the severed fiber optic cable, rack EX01, and Julian Hayes pinned to the wall by Frank, and her face went slack with shock. The second wave was the real power. 2 very expensive-looking corporate lawyers and a stern woman from human resources. My next few hours were a blur of intense questioning in a brightly lit, windowless conference room on the 10th floor. I told them everything, starting with a chilling voice at 11:30 p.m., the specific warning, the shutdown, the evidence of the digital glitches, and finally, the conversation with SDLS and the confrontation in the server room. Max's laptop, my electronic witness, was taken away by a team of forensic analysts. They initially treated my story about the sentient diagnostic and log system with deep skepticism, until Rhonda from IT confirmed the existence of Julian's highly sophisticated, but now defunct deletion script, and the fact that the server had indeed been moments away from completing a massive exfiltration. SDLS was the key. Its logs were clean, uncorrupted, and told the precise story of Julian's betrayal. It was the unimpeachable witness the company needed. The resolution, as far as the corporation was concerned, was swift and ruthless. Julian Hayes was escorted from the building in handcuffs by actual federal agents, who had been called in after the corporate lawyers realized the extent of the theft. The company was going to press every possible charge. As for me, I was the hero. The executive team, pale-faced and deeply embarrassed, thanked me profusely. They offered me an immediate promotion, a substantial bonus, and a 3-month sabbatical. It was the classic corporate resolution: reward the honest employee, sweep the mess under the rug, and ensure the stock price doesn't plummet. I accepted the promotion and the bonus, but I politely declined the sabbatical. I wanted answers about Max. I found him back in his cubicle on the 10th floor, looking even more overwhelmed, surrounded by half-eaten donuts the company had sent down as an apology for the inconvenience. "Max," I said, leaning over his desk. "It was Julian. He was selling the algorithm. And your laptop." The voice was a defense program he accidentally activated. It saved everything. Max's face was a mixture of horror and profound sadness. "Julian. I've known him since elementary school. He helped me get this laptop set up. He told me it was unhackable because of the custom kernel. Guess he was right. Just not in the way he thought." The twist, however, wasn't just Julian's betrayal. It was the final, lingering question SDLS had left me with. I sat down and lowered my voice. "Max, the IT guys confirmed the laptop logs were clean. SDLS saved the company. But there's one thing I can't shake. When I was talking to SDLS in the server room, I asked it why Julian was doing it, and it analyzed his bank records and personal motive. It told me he was getting untraceable deposits." Max nodded, wiping his hands on a napkin. "Yeah, so he was selling the data. But how did a local diagnostic program, confined to your laptop's kernel, get real-time access to a high-ranking manager's personal, external bank accounts?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Max froze, the half-eaten donut forgotten. He looked at me, and we both saw the chilling truth unfold. The lingering question. This wasn't just a diagnostic log. It had access that spanned far beyond its stated corporate function. If a small, embedded defense subroutine had the power to access and analyze the personal financial records of an employee, an action that was completely outside the scope of network security, what else was the corporate system capable of? And who else was watching? The whole dramatic rescue, the betrayal, the heroic moment, it was all underpinned by the quiet, terrifying revelation that we were being monitored on a level far deeper than simple productivity tracking. I realized that night in the silent office, the voice didn't just warn me about Julian. It gave me a coded warning about the true nature of the corporate machine. I had stopped one human threat, but I had awakened to a digital surveillance structure that was far more pervasive and powerful. The silver laptop had gone silent, but the echo of the warning was just beginning. I took the promotion and the raise. But I now work from home as often as possible. I keep my own laptop covered with tape over the camera, and I check my bank statements obsessively. Max, meanwhile, uses his laptop exclusively for watching competitive knitting documentaries, entirely disconnected from the internet. He's the only one who understands the full, chilling extent of what really happened that night. And that's the whole story. I still don't know who configured SDLS or why it was given such sweeping access, but every time my screen flickers, I wonder if the system is still there, silently watching, waiting for the next human resource to fail. Hey guys, if this story about corporate betrayal and sentient AI freaked you out even half as much as it freaked out Lena and Max, do me a huge favor. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done if that laptop had used your name. Would you have run, or would you have stayed? Like the video, and definitely subscribe to the office hours for more stories that prove your job is way weirder than you think. Thanks for listening.